Beijing has once again reiterated its firm support for Hong Kong's chief executive Carrie Lam after nearly 2 million people rallied yesterday demanding she resign over her handling of the extradition bill saga. The Chinese Foreign Ministry insists the protests are not in line with the mainstream public opinion in Hong Kong and continues to blame foreign interference for the mass demonstrations in the city.
中央政府对林郑月娥行政长官和特区政府的工作一直是予以充分肯定的。中央政府也将继续坚定地支持行政长官和特区政府依法施政。
Well, Mrs. Lam has suspended the bill and apologized for her handling of the saga. Defiant protesters are not backing down. Thousands continue to demonstrate in Admiralty outside the chief executive's office. And you can see here, these are now live pictures from Hong Kong. And they are demanding to meet with Mrs. Lam and are still pressuring her to completely withdraw the extradition bill instead of just suspending it. Earlier today, Hong Kong pro-democracy activist Joshua Wong joined protesters just hours after he was released from prison. Now, Wong was the poster child of the 2014 Occupy protests in Hong Kong.
It's my honor and pleasure to join this movement. Unfortunately, I can't join rally or demonstration within the past 2 weeks, but now is the time for me to join this fight. It's time for us to urge Carrie Lam to withdraw the extradition law proposal, and it's her responsibility to step down and to face how 2 million people already joined the fight and urge her to bear the political responsibility.
Well, nearly 2 million people took to the streets of Hong Kong. Solidarity protests also took place around the world yesterday. There were several rallies in the U.S. standing up for Hong Kong. Nearly 1,000 demonstrators in New York crossed the Manhattan Bridge, chanting slogans as they marched. In the United Kingdom, scores of people gathered outside London's Parliament Square, and they also demanded the Hong Kong government completely withdraw the extradition bill. In Taiwan, an estimated 10,000 people turned out for hours in the scorching heat. Demonstrators held placards that read, "No extradition to China," and "Taiwan supports Hong Kong." And then in Australia, hundreds gathered in Melbourne. A number of Hong Kongers living in the city addressed the crowds and shared their views on what's been happening in the SAR over the past 2 weeks. All of this has angered China. Beijing is blaming foreign interference for rising tensions in the city and has repeatedly warned the U.S. to stay out of Hong Kong and China's affairs. And at the same time, Republican and Democratic lawmakers in Washington have reaffirmed America's support for Hong Kong. China has also urged protesters not to become pawns in the U.S.-China trade dispute. Now, for the latest, let's cross over to Lynette Lim, and she is in Hong Kong. Lynette, Mrs. Lam's apology last night obviously failed to pacify protesters that, as we see here, continue to gather in Admiralty.
That's right, Glenda. The apology, I must add, was, issued by a government spokesperson, and it was actually in the third person. So protesters here came out starting from 3 p.m. today. So they're still at it 5 hours in, occupying Long War Road and Tim Wah Avenue, just outside the Legislative Council building, chanting for her to step down, chanting for the bill to be scrapped. There are other demands as well. These are the 4 main demands that we've heard. The 2 others being, rescinding the label of riot to the protests, and also releasing the number of releasing the people who have been arrested so far. So these 4 main protests have been chanted during the march on Sunday. It's also been reiterated many times over the last week. For Carrie Lam, it's unclear where she is right now, but it's obvious that she will be unable to meet them here today. It's obvious that she's currently deciding on what to do. Earlier we did see that her counselors, her executive counselors, came out in support of her and were telling the public to be more understanding and to give her a second chance. They were also saying that she has learned her lesson and that they had advised her to make a public apology in person.
Well, following that apology, well, if it is to come, does she have enough support to stay in power?
So far, her executive councillors, now these are her, de facto cabinet, they say that they fully back her. They say that Carrie Lam has the backing of the Exco as well as Beijing. And earlier today, coming from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, spokesperson Lu Gang in Beijing did also reiterate that Carrie Lam has Beijing's support. Now, interestingly, a former transport secretary, Anthony Chong, he gave an interview to South China Morning Post, and he said that Carrie Lam should withdraw the bill and issue a formal apology tomorrow. He also said that she should assess if she needs to step down. Currently, at the same time, just to give an update on the movement, it's still all peaceful on Longwall Road. Although protesters are currently searching for new directions. We know that this movement is different from Occupy movement in 2014 in that it's rather leaderless. We know today that the Civil Human Rights Front, which has been the rally organizer over the last 2 Sundays, they held an information booth today, collecting feedback and opinion on the future direction of the movement. So we know that, organizers are still regrouping, protesters are still regrouping, planning future direction. But we also know that the Civil Human Rights Front gave an update today. They said they collected 7 million Hong Kong dollars for a fund that's for victims or people injured in Wednesday or 12 June clashes with the police. That comes up to about $900,000 US.
Yeah, we can see in those pictures just next to you, Lynette, that the protesters are still outside of Carrie Lam's office. Doesn't look like they're going to be going anywhere very soon. But thanks very much for that update from our Hong Kong bureau.